Hi guys, Dr. Simon Hill here again, and today I'm going to be talking about property management, specifically buy-to-let property management. Now, some of my followers have been asking about how do I manage my properties? Do I have a letting agency do it? Do I do it myself? So I wanted to kind of answer that question and kind of give a more in-depth answer to why I do what I do. And perhaps some of the reasoning behind why you might choose one or the other, or a mix of both. So the simple answer to the original question is that I manage all of my properties myself. Now that is partially made easier because all of my properties are within about 15 miles of where I live. So that makes life a little bit easier should I need to visit a property in an emergency situation. But I have also got a number of different processes and systems in place to make sure that if there is an emergency, that things are kind of resolved as soon as possible and can be resolved sometimes without me and my engagement. So some of those things are processes within or the relationship I have with the tenant in the first place. So for example, when tenants move in, I ensure that they have a printed out piece of detail saying this is where the stopcock is, this is where the fuse box is, this is where, so on and so forth. And these are the numbers to call in an emergency. So if there is an emergency where there's water pouring out all over the place, don't call me because I might be asleep somewhere else, not able to answer my phone, etc. Call this specific plumber. If the issue is less important, there's a bit of a very slow leak, or there is, perhaps the hot water's not working, then obviously that's a slightly less important side of it. It's not an emergency scenario. So I would say, okay, call me and I will arrange something. Having said that, I am in the process of putting in some systems that will allow, things like WhatsApp groups between me, the tenant, and the plumber that I would usually use. So they can go directly to the plumber via that WhatsApp group, but I'm still included in the conversation, so I know what's going on. So that makes life easier. But there are three main phases, and I've kind of skipped the first one, so we'll go back to the first one now and give you more details around that. So the three phases are finding a tenant, managing a tenant or tenancy, and 3, changing tenants or a tenancy ending. Now I'm really fortunate that I've had 2 actually. I've had 2 tenancies end for various reasons. I'm glad to say none of them are necessarily down to me, but they're reasons that, again, personal reasons to the individual tenants. But let's get to the first stage. So finding a tenant. Now, of course, if we were to go with a letting agent, they would come round and take good pictures of your property. But if you've got an iPhone or any smartphone, to be fair, you can probably take pretty good pictures yourself. In fact, you could probably just watch a couple of YouTube videos, how to take good pictures, make sure there's good light, make sure if you've got a wide angle lens on your iPhone, I know, like the 0.5 one on the iPhone, that tends to make nice big looking pictures of your rooms. They'll come around, they'll take those pictures, they'll stick them on Rightmove, they'll stick them on their website, and they'll stick a little poster in their wall, in their window perhaps. And that's okay, but my personal preference is do it yourself, take the pictures yourself. They're a lot easier, and of course you don't have to pay because letting agencies will generally charge you to come and take the photos. They will charge you to set up a listing on Rightmove and things like that. So what I just do is take all the pictures myself, write a general description of the property, use ChatGPT or another AI system to make a more polished property description. That could be a good solution for you if you're not great with words like me. And stick it on Facebook. Facebook is a big old, whilst I generally try not to use Facebook too much for socializing these days, I do use Facebook for Marketplace because it is free, of course, and lots of people are on there. And in my experience, renting out, I've had a total 7 tenancies that I've started over the years, and all of them have come through Facebook. And every time I've advertised a property on Facebook, I've had usually at least 50 inquiries, usually somewhere between 50 and 80 inquiries, usually within the first 2 days. So the demand is really high, particularly in the area that where I am. And that's great, but of course you then have to start assessing who these tenants are and, are they suitable for your property. So the first thing you might do is set up a Calendly link or something like that to arrange viewings. So you can set out a series of time slots where people can go and book your property, and straight away that indicates a buying signal from somebody that's really interested. Because yes, somebody might say, "Is this property still available?" on Facebook, but how many of those 80 actually book a viewing? And usually it's a lot less. You might have 15, 20 viewings, and that's okay. It's no big deal. Because chances are there will be some decent folks in there that match the criteria that you set, and you've got to create your own criteria of what you are willing to accept for your property. If it's a really nice high-end property, then you're going to want somebody that's going to be, again, potentially high-end, trustworthy. Although just because they look high-end doesn't mean they are high-end, as again I've had personal experience of before. So get it on Facebook, set up some viewings, and then conduct the viewings. And conduct the viewings yourself. Again, this is, I think, very valuable to do it yourself rather than to have a letting agent do it, because you get to meet them, you get to make the decision. Now, hopefully you're a reasonably good judge of character, and you can get an impression straight away of somebody that's good. So, you can have a chat with them whilst you go around. Oh, so what job do you do? All those little things that get you into their world and allow you to make an assessment of who they are. Because if you make an assessment based on purely a Facebook photo, that can end very badly. I've had tenants in the past with that have had tattoos and and it would be very easy to judge them based on their appearance. But you meet these people, you have a conversation, or you've got a full-time job that pays them really well. They've got a really good reference from that job. It can be you can judge very quickly on looks and be very, very wrong. So make a full and clear assessment of an individual rather than just judging purely based on their ability to write you a message on Facebook or something like that. So conduct your interviews, conduct your interviews. I mean, it's essentially what it is, but conduct your viewings, and obviously you're essentially interviewing them as you go around as well, finding out a bit about them. If they've got pets, I would strongly recommend that you have open arms to pets. My recommendation is go and meet the pet. Go pop, say, can I come and meet the dog, the cat, whatever. I mean, if it's a goldfish, not so important. But go and meet them at their own property, because that allows two things. A, it allows you to meet the dog, cats, whatever. But it allows you to see how the people live in their current property. So if it's an absolute mess, then that gives you an indication of okay, maybe they might be good people, but they might just be messy. And messy is not necessarily a bad thing. They might still take care of the property, but again, you can make judgments based on that. My final step of choosing a tenant is to set up a form. So set up a Google form or something like that, and ask lots of questions. Do you smoke? Jobs, references for jobs, get them to upload bank statements, get them to upload pay slips, just to prove everything that they've told you already is accurate and correct. Now, of course, they could easily fake a lot of that information as well. I say easily, it would take time, but it is very possible to fake that kind of information. But again, it gives you more confidence. Other things to potentially ask for: do they have guarantors? And what's the other thing? And also, how much are they willing to pay? Because particularly if you've got lots of competition for the property, you may have an opportunity to increase the rent slightly. Having said that, whenever I've asked this question, I've never set the rent as high as the person that's been successful has said. So they might say 1,100, but I would always give a little bit of a discount, particularly if there's somebody that stands out as a good tenant, and particularly if the house needs a little bit of love. So if walls need painting, and needs a little bit of decor, things like that, then give a little bit of discount, because it's a win-win. You get hopefully a good tenant, and still something that's higher than what you originally, the rent that was higher than you originally set, and potentially your property gets a little bit of love. Of course, that can very much go the other way, and they might not be the people you think they are, but those are some of the things that I would certainly strongly suggest. You can do credit checks, but again, I've never necessarily found them particularly useful. Plus, there are lots of searches that you can do for free that would give you a little bit of clarity in terms of what the individual's like. And what the other thing slipped out of my mind. But again, those are certainly some of the key things that I've done regularly on all of my tenancies before they get started. So that's step one. Step two, managing the tenancy. I said a lot about it in the beginning of the video, but things like when things go wrong, because inevitably there will be leaks. There will be, at the moment I'm dealing with a leak in the bath that's then leaking into the kitchen, so that's problematic. We've had electrical issues, switches stopping working. We've had boilers break down and need repairing. We've had boilers break down and need replacing altogether. So there are lots of different things that can go wrong. So just bear that in mind, and have a system to deal with it. Be prepared for those things. Particularly if you self-manage, you're going to get a message on, as I have this year, on New Year's Day, have a message. On my birthday, had a message saying there's a leak in the roof. Can you sort it, please? And that's a pain. It's certainly, that's probably the biggest hurt of this process. It's not so much the money, because you're going to have to repair it anyway. But the problem with self-managing is you tend to get inconvenient messages at inconvenient times. So as long as you're willing to deal with that and the potential frustration and anxiety that comes along with that, then I would strongly suggest self-managing as an option for you. The alternative, of course, letting agent will tend to charge around 10% of whatever you're charging rent. So if you're charging £1,000, that's £100 a month. £100 a month, £1,200 a year, that's nearly the cost of a new boiler. So, certainly in my area, it may be different where you are. But, bear that in mind, because in terms of the stress, is it worth £1,200 worth of stress for a letting agent to deal with the conversation and then still charge you? Because, of course, if there is a leaking roof, they're not going to fix it for free. They will arrange the fix, but they won't fix it for free. So you're still going to have to pay for it as the landlord. So again, bear that in mind. I would, again, strongly recommend you self-manage if you want to keep hold of as much cash as possible, because cash obviously is then really strong for reinvesting in the future or enjoying for yourself. The other thing that I have heard, I've not experienced, but I have heard through tradespeople, is that some tradespeople that I've used have had conversations with estate agents or letting agents that have asked them to increase their normal price and give the letting agent an extra bit of money, a little commission, for example. So if a boiler's £1,600, charge £2,000, and the estate agent takes an additional £400. Now, that's not all letting agents. I'm sure it is probably just a minority of letting agents. But again, another reason to self-manage, and kind of, again, yes, you pick up a little bit of additional stress, but you save a ton of cash. And that, again, that can be really valuable for your long term. And again, the stress isn't really that difficult, particularly once you've got systems in place. So if I've got a plumbing issue, I know exactly the plumber to speak to. If I've got a roofing issue, I know exactly the roofer to speak to. So again, it's just having that process and knowing where to go when things go wrong. Finally, in terms of ending a tenancy, I've never had to end a tenancy myself and hopefully that's a testament to my selection process. But I have had tenancies end, again, because of personal issues from the tenant side. And that's can be problematic, depending on who the tenant is. If the tenant's looked after a property, great. I've had both. I've had one of each. One tenant had looked after the property, did lots of work on the property, put new carpets in, and then 6 months down the line, they had to leave. And that was a really sad day because it caused more stress and more viewings and all of that stuff. But they were they were a really good person. And they, it was one of those things that that was the situation they were in. The other side of things was, tenants that don't look after the property, or do look after the property in one way, but then don't in another. So, causing damage to different things, and not admitting to it, leaving waste behind, dog waste and general rubbish. Again, breaking it, there's just no need for it. And of course, what you then need to do is essentially argue the refund out, or taking the money out of their deposit that they give to you. If they are giving deposits, if you are self-managing and they are giving deposits to you, then you need to keep that within a deposit protection scheme. So I use the deposit protection scheme. There are a couple of different alternatives. It's a bit of a pain in the bum, but again, there are different things that you need to do to protect that money, so that if you don't lose it, or you don't, and then also if things go wrong, you can claim some of that money back. So rather than giving a full £1,000 refund, you tend to go to negotiation between yourselves, say, okay, well, this work is going to cost £300, you can have £700 back. And if worst case scenario that doesn't work, you can go to mediation via the service that you've chosen. So those are the three main stages. The big one, of course, is managing the tenancy day to day. And again, if you're being charged 10% from a letting agent, that is a lot of money accumulating very quickly, even when things aren't going wrong at all. So you could have, I've had many months where nothing's gone wrong with the property, but every month then I've had to spend £100, or I would have had to spend £100 on a letting agent. So it can be very expensive. Now, one thing I've not mentioned, and I will talk about more in another video, is contracts and tenancy agreements. It is a very complicated system. I would strongly recommend you take legal advice before you write up your own tenancy agreement. It's certainly what I did, just to make sure it is secure, written correctly, and protects you and protects the tenant. Because the last thing you want to do is write something up yourself, or even worse, do a handshake agreement of, it's going to be £1,000 rent and nothing's actually written down at all, and it all go very wrong. So I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but again, I'm not a legal advisor, I'm not a legal expert, so please seek out your own advice on that and get further clarification. As always, if there are any questions, if you want to know more about a particular topic, please do reach out, drop some messages in the comments, and I will happily come back to them. Obviously, like and subscribe, the usual. It really helps me, helps the channel. We're gradually building up a little bit of momentum now with some of these videos. But again, share them with friends. I'd really appreciate that. And I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.